So to start off, I adore Scott Pilgrim. Scott Pilgrim originates as a manga-inspired comic by Brian Lee O'Malley, which is about the eponymous Scott Pilgrim. Today I'm here to talk about the latest installment in the series, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. As a super fan, this is definitely the best the series has ever been. Just saying a lot, as I've read the comic dozens of times and watched the movie quite a bit too. I suggest you read the comics and watch the movie, albeit it's less important, if you really want to understand the references, as I think it makes the story more enjoyable. Needless to say, there are some changes. The movie and the comics differ a lot, and the show is definitely its own thing. The movie is just kind of inspired off of the comic, and the comic doesn't really, the characters don't really improve in the way that they do in the show. However, in the movie, they did actually plan on covering the whole book, they just didn't. But enough rambling, time to actually talk about the TV show. I'll talk about the first few episodes before we get into spoiler territory. We start off with an awesome song called Bloom by Talk. I can't use it for the vid though. Anyway, a barren landscape with our main guy Scott trawling through it. But this desolation is interrupted by Ramona flowers, prompting him to wake up. He wakes up next to his roommate Wallace. Wallace couldn't care less about this girl he dreams about, is tired of Scott's leeching. We cut to Scott rocking out with his band with their two fans. The biggest fan of Scott's band is Knives, his 17-year-old girlfriend.
FBI, open up! I have to go!
She and Scott haven't done anything, but at least she thinks his band rocks. He goes out to a party, no girlfriend in tow, and his friends ditch him. Spotting the girl of his dreams, Ramona, he showcases his complete lack of flirt game. Guys, women do not appreciate random Sonic trivia. After blowing it, he wanders off, bumping into Julie. Julie is hosting the party and informs Scott he's verboten from dating Ramona. This will obviously not work on him. The next day, Scott orders a movie from Netflix, waiting at the door until, surprise, Ramona delivers the movie. Ramona explains she uses Scott's dreams as a fast travel point essentially, and Scott asks her out, which she agrees to.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
His joblessness and poor small talk cuts to Gideon, one of Ramona's 7 evil exes. Yeah, so basically she dated a lot of people who then became kinda evil after she punked out on them.
Yeah, in middle school.
Gideon is the self-elected leader and is currently viewing Scott and Ramona via screens and stuff. Yeah, it's a little weird. Cold weather leads to Scott and Ramona heading back to her house, taking a shortcut through subspace yet again. We even see she has a cat, making it now freezing Scott some tea. Scott is shivering and can't wait for the timer. He walks into her changing and romance ensues. Sparks fly, you know, the whole shebang. No sex happens though. Back to the League of Evil Exes, Matthew Patel enters, the first evil ex. Some details on Scott. He's 23, lives in Toronto. Gideon, briefing Patel, still notifies us Scott has maybe held hands with Knives once, but beyond that, nothing. Scott is actually considered the best fighter in the province, although according to him, probably. Patel is psyched up here anyway. Both exes cackle, knowing the imminent end of Scott. After having spent the night with Ramona, he asks her out to a second date, and this is to his battle of bands, just like in the comics and the movie. To this point, there's been little changes outside of the evil ex layer thing. Scott gets the letter from Matthew, but he doesn't really read it. League schmeeg, you know. Scott is now faced with his current girlfriend and the girl he actually likes at the same time, so they both want to see his band. On top of that, Crash and the boys dropped out, which did not happen in the comic or the movie. Knives and Ramona almost notice that they're dating the same guy, but they're interrupted. This performance is then also interrupted on top of that by Matthew Patel. He has his own snazzy intro, detailing how he's part of the League of Evil Exes, cueing Ramona to tell us his story. It's not that interesting, so let's talk about his fight with Scott instead, huh? They both charge at each other all out, and Scott vanishes? Huh? 3 measly coins is all that is left of Scott, and that's the end of episode 1. Spoiler alerts, so just be careful. I'm going to start talking about spoilers. So now's your opportunity to go watch the show on your own without too much information on what's going to happen or what will happen next. You know, just avoid all that. You can just watch the rest of the video when you finish the show because you're in for a hell of a ride. Okay, are they gone? Now for those who haven't seen the show or gone, or if you don't mind spoilers, I struggle to explain how perfect this show is. We find out that Scott not only didn't lose to Matthew, but that he has been abducted. By who, you ask? The Katayanagi twins, at the behest of nobody other than Scott himself. Huh? From the future, which is already confusing, and I'm gonna have to explain it in depth. Older Scott does this as at some point in the future, in the universe that Scott beats all 7 exes, he eventually marries Ramona, but they end up separated, which leads him to asking Wallace for advice, which he sarcastically responds with the idea that he should go back in time to fix things. Because, you know, Wallace is a sassy bitch, which Scott takes seriously, as he's a big dummy. Hijinks ensue, and funnily enough, Scott being gone fixes a lot of things. Scott not being there to fight Ramona's exes is something I initially didn't think would work. Oh boy, I was so wrong. Ramona really just needed to help the people she wronged find closure a bit. Not all of them, but quote-unquote evil exes just needed a hug for the most part. Maybe I'm just easily impressed, but I was floored here. The way we see people we thought were evil just turn into normal chill dudes and dudettes is awesome. My personal favorite example of this is watching Lucas, ex number 2, and Gideon, ex number 7, find out his name is actually Gordon, become friends, screw around in a montage that feels like it spans a long time, but it only was around 90 minutes. This comes to a head when Scott, after coming back from the future, which I now realize writing is something really funny as there are a ton of Back to the Future references within the show, tries to fight the 7 evil exes. This doesn't really work, and we are ambushed by a mysterious figure. This ends up being even older Scott, which I called out just as I did with a lot of dialogue before it happened. Even older Scott prattles on and on. Even with his meddling, Scott and Ramona still end up together and then separating. This is where things get really good. Ramona breaks her cycle of leaving those she loves, and Scott and she kiss. What makes it even funnier is that Scott could have just talked to her, instead of trying to get so strong he could beat up everything. Things end off with Scott and Ramona together. The exes are happy and more put together, although Gideon might just be why there's a season 2. The redemption of not only the exes, but Scott and Ramona made me cry more than I wanted to admit. As a guy who has occasionally felt like the villain of his own story, seeing a character learn and move past that makes me feel so happy. Mirroring my own personal life, the breakthroughs when you get past an argument in a relationship are really something else. I had never seen it put to film before like this. I am just so thankful I had to appreciate Scott Pilgrim in a different way than I have before, and I want everyone to do the same. A story so pivotal to my youth growing along with me is magical, and I just want to thank everyone involved with making this, and to my family for watching it with me. Now thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my rambling.